Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are here and we are live for our Week 11 episode of the NFL Pick Show for 2024. Doing an early stream this week. It's normally the streams are 7 p.m. Eastern. We're doing this one at 5 p.m. Eastern. So I hope a few of you will be joining me on your supper hour to talk some shop about the NFL in 2024, Week 11. Week 10, coming off of a fairly solid week with the notable exception of my totals, where unfortunately I had I had my worst showing of anything all season long on the totals from last week. And just when I was not crowing, but like I was talking about, oh, maybe I've turned a bit of a corner on the totals, maybe. And turns out that was not the case. At least not last week. It was a bit of a struggle. But we're gonna go ahead and start the recording right there, which is lovely. And we're gonna turn that off so we don't have the God rays. All right. Other than that, I think we're just going to go right ahead here. We're getting started early, and let's waste no more time and get into the show for this week. So, in 5, 4, 3, what's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and welcome to week 11 of my weekly NFL football pick show for the 2024 NFL season. And as I just mentioned in the preamble here on the stream, had a fairly successful week in week 10 with one very notable exception. Week 10, 9-5 straight up. Usually like to be in double digits, but with only 14 games, going 9-5, not going to poo-poo it too much. Also went 9-5 against the spread. So my hot streak against the spread continued in week 10. Now a full 22 games above 500 against the spread this season, which is chef's kiss. It's wonderful. I love it. Now the give back was on the totals. So my totals unfortunately went an abysmal 3-10-1 last week. If you faded all of my totals last week, you made so much money. Enjoy that mortgage payment, because man, it was not pretty. It was not pretty on the totals last week. That dipped me back below 500 for the season as a whole. So I'm 90-62 picking the league straight up, 85-63-4 picking the league against the spread, and now 73-77-2 on the totals on the season. Now 4 games under 500. Taking a peek at the Bridgewater's Finest Pick'em pool for season 13 of this show. Moved back down into 21st place out of 34 in that pool. 819 of 1,235 confidence points in total on the year. So I did stay flat at 66.3% for the season as a whole, which is what I was coming out of last week. I did bring in 70 of 105 confidence points last week, which is, again, about, it's exactly 2/3. So 66.7% there, which is why I stayed flat for the season as a whole. Shout out to our week 10 winner, Goki's Picks, my good friend Gorian, who has been a member of the community and a viewer of mine for a number of years. He had an excellent week last week, bringing in 86 of 105 possible confidence points, a clip of just under 82%. So Goki's winners was our winner in week 10. Tyler's Picks remains the overall leader in the pool, as he has been for the vast majority of the season as a whole. 906 of 1,235 confidence points on the season for Tyler's Picks. That is 73.4%. He is pacing the field and doing so relatively comfortably right now. So even though we have so much of the season left, it's probably his to lose. We'll take a peek now into Fantasy Corner, which is, of course, brought to you by my good friends at the Dynasty Trade Calculator. And ladies and gentlemen, if you are like me and have taken the step into Dynasty, Keeper, and long-term fantasy football, the Dynasty Trade Calculator is one of the absolute best tools and resources available to you online. You're going to find player evaluations, trade evaluations, rankings, podcasts from a bunch of great experts. It does not matter how your league is configured. no, whatever weird stuff your league happens to have, the Dynasty Trade Calculator has got you covered in terms of tailoring their rankings and trade evaluations to your league specifically. So you will find my affiliate link to the DTC in the description to this live stream or the VOD. You'll find it there. And for as little as a cup of coffee, you can gain access to, again, one of the absolute best resources available to you online for Dynasty, Keeper, and long-term fantasy football. Now, across my 8 fantasy football teams last week, even money, 4-4 straight up across my 8 leagues. Now 51-29 in all of those leagues straight up. Once again, it's 8 different leagues. Best ball, second place in one of my 3 teams, 8th and 9th in the other ones, which I've been, kind of treading water in 8th and 9th in those leagues for a while now. Now, one of those 4 wins that I did have in fantasy this week was in the Professionals Dynasty Fantasy Football League, which is my fantasy football league. I picked up the win against Chris to move my record in that league to a sparkling 8-2 on the season. I'm in first place. I've clinched a playoff spot. I've won 7 straight matchups in the Professionals Dynasty Fantasy Football. Unfortunately, one of my 4 losses came in the Ante & Co. Dynasty Fantasy Football League, where I lost in the battle of the Justin and Justine. I picked up the loss against Justine, my second straight loss in that league, which drops me to 4-6. Trying to defend a championship there. I'm hanging on to a playoff spot. Barely 8 teams make the playoffs. I think I'm currently in 7th, so I'm barely hanging on to a playoff spot there, but got to start picking it up sooner rather than later, because again, we only have about a month of the fantasy football regular season left before we start, staring down the barrel of the postseason. I have week 11 matchups against Mitch in the Professionals and Bill, longtime member of the community in Ante & Co. Right now, I'm favored in both of those matchups, although the matchup with Bill is I'm a very marginal favorite in that game. But again, that's the league where I really desperately need to start winning some games. And I'll take this opportunity to remind you, as I always do, that if you go to the description of this live stream, of the VOD, of the podcast episode, however you interact with this show, you're going to find all my results from last week, all my straight up against the spread and over-under plays for week 11 in the NFL. You're also going to find information on joining the Bridgewater's Finest Pick'em Pool for season 13 of this show, as well as information on joining the NFL YouTube Prognosticators Facebook page. So that is, once again, a bunch of great prognosticators just like me who are doing exactly, or is not exactly what I do, doing similar to what I do. We all have kind of a little different flavor, a little different spin on things. But if you're looking for picks, if you're looking for analysis of the upcoming week's games, the NFL YouTube Prognosticators Facebook page is exactly where you need to go. So we're coming into a week 11 slate of games. Once again, we have 4 teams on bye, all of them in the NFC, which is kind of interesting. Arizona, Carolina, the New York Giants, and the Tampa Bay Bucks all off this week, which means we got a 14-game slate. The Packers are back from the bye, so they go back into their primetime spot in the picks analysis here. So we'll be doing Thursday night, 3 games, Packers game, 4 games, Sunday nighter, 3 games, and then finishing off the picks with Monday Night Football. Got a couple folks in the chat. Andrew saying you're earlier tonight. Yeah, I put out a tweet earlier that I just kind of felt like going early tonight. And I hope I gave people adequate notice that I was going to be streaming early. I thought, supper time with Bridgewater's Finest would be kind of a fun thing to do on the show this week. And Broken Ankle is in the chat too. I'm just dropping in for a minute to say you're awesome. Appreciate you, my friend. You too. I'll need to watch it tomorrow, but while I'm here, give you a thumbs up. Awesome. That's great, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you popping in, and I hope you enjoy the show when you get a chance to watch it tomorrow. Andrew, not for breakfast. I could do a morning stream sometime. Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll figure out something there. We'll do a morning stream here some week. All right. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to grab my trusty green journal here, and we are going to get kicked off and started here with our picks for week 11 in the NFL. And we're going to kick things off, of course, with Thursday Night Football, which is a matchup of the NFC East. And this is like the marquee matchup, in fact, of the NFC East this season. This game, I believe, even though it's week 11, goes a long way to determining who ultimately winds up winning this division. That is the Washington Commanders on the road in Philadelphia, playing host, or with the Eagles playing host to the Commanders. So Washington picked up a loss last week, marquee game that we talked about at a little bit of extra length last week against Pittsburgh. And like that was, I feel like that game was just about everything that I kind of hyped it up to be. Like that was an excellent football game. That was super, super fun to watch. The Commanders falling just a little bit short in that one. Meanwhile, the Eagles, they're on a 5-game win streak. They're playing as good as I've seen them play in recent memory. They've really turned it around from the beginning of the season, where I kind of felt like they were kind of coasting on name, if that makes any sense. I just didn't feel like that was a team that was kind of playing up to the expectations that you would have had for them coming into this season. But man, as it sits right now, the Eagles, top 5 offensive efficiency, top 5 total scoring offense, top 5 total defense, top 5 scoring defense over the last month. This Eagles team is absolutely on fire. And look, Commanders are no slouches. They're top 10 across the board on the offensive side. Their defense has been playing exceptionally well this season. And I think that is like the one key area where the Commanders, I feel, have improved the most year over year. Like last year, they were doing good things offensively. They just couldn't tend to stop anybody. And there were long swaths of the season where they could not stop anybody. That's not the case this year. This defense is playing very, very well. In terms of this particular game, I think what we saw last week is that the Commanders are a good football team. They're just not quite there yet. The Eagles over the last few seasons are a team that's been used to the spotlight. They play high profile games. They've made deep runs in the playoffs. They've got a championship in recent memory. Like this Eagles team is battle tested. Whereas I feel like the Commanders are just working their way there. And again, Jaden Daniels is a rookie quarterback. I mean, he's got so much more developing to do at the NFL level. I just don't know that Washington is quite ready to step to this game and step to this moment. I like the Philadelphia Eagles here at home in Philadelphia to get the win over a division rival in Washington. And I do feel like, barring some catastrophic injury, that probably all but wraps up the division for the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think anybody else is going to catch them. So let's take the Eagles at home to get the win over Washington. On the line, the Eagles are laying -3.5, which does mean that you have to buy the extra half point in order to lay the points on the Eagles. It's a tough thing to do when the Commanders have covered 7 spreads this season and the Eagles have not covered against the spread at home. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a giant coward and I'm going to hedge my bets on Thursday night. I'm going to take the Eagles to win the game outright, but I am going to take the +3.5 on the Washington Commanders. I do feel like this is like a play in the final 2 minutes that winds up winning this game. So taking the Eagles to win, but give me the +3.5 on Washington. Total in the game set at 48.5 points. The Commanders have hit 7 overs to the season so far. And I'm taking a situational over here. In this situation, the Eagles and Commanders, Philadelphia at home, Washington on the road, have combined to hit 6 of 8 overs this year. So I like the over in this one. Let's go over the 48.5 point total. We're going to go 28-26 in favor of the Eagles. Philly wins. Washington covers the +3.5 over on the points. Aiden has a wild fantasy football trade in the chat. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the next 3 games quickly. And then before we look at the Packers game, Aiden, I'm going to take a peek at your trade and tell you what I think. The Jacksonville Jaguars this week travel to Detroit to take on a Lions team that feels nigh on unbeatable right now. Detroit has reeled off 7 consecutive wins, and whether they have been front running in games or they've had to dig down deep and come up with ways to win football games, a la last week, Jared Goff throwing, 106 interceptions. No, he threw 5 interceptions in one game, which usually should be death, right? Like that should be that should be fait accompli. A team is not typically going to come back from something like that. Motor City Dan Campbell and this Detroit Lions team is different. They are just plain different. Jacksonville, losers of 3 consecutive games, and now looking like they're going to be without Trevor Lawrence potentially for the rest of the season. I don't think any decision has been made as of yet, but Trevor Lawrence dealing with an AC joint injury, and I think the best option for him in terms of his long-term health and viability is probably going to be surgery. Again, I don't think they've made any decision on that yet, but it looks like that's the best course of action for the Commanders, for the Jaguars. So that being the case, we could be looking at the rest of the season without Trevor Lawrence. I certainly don't expect him to play in this game. So that'll be really interesting to see what happens here in the coming days. What kind of decision gets made there. Not all sunshine and rainbows for Detroit. Sam Laporta is dealing with a not a similar injury, but a similar type of injury. He's also got a shoulder injury. I would lean him being out in this game. I think he might miss a couple of weeks, maybe 1 to 2 weeks, dealing with that shoulder injury. But again, I don't feel like it's as severe as Trevor Lawrence's. His season is certainly not at risk. I'm just leaning out on him playing this week. Regardless, whether Laporta plays this week or not, I obviously feel really good about the Lions in this game. They're 3-1 at home. The Jags have not won away from home yet this year in a game that wasn't on neutral ground. I think they won over in London, but in terms of like a road game in the terrestrial United States, they have not won yet this year. So let's go ahead and take the Detroit Lions in this spot. Obviously, Detroit at home gets the win over the Jags. Now, on the line, Detroit is laying a college number. The Lions are laying -14 in this game against Jacksonville. Now, I want to say this. The smart play here is not to lay those points. This is the smart play. Because as good as Detroit is, A, I don't think spreads should get that big in the NFL, period. And B, the Jags on the defensive side of the ball have actually been pretty good lately. The offense, I don't think has been particularly good, but defensively, they've done some things. They've been bend but don't break. They haven't been giving up a metric ton of points on the board. It's a bad idea to lay these points. I'm still going to do it, but it's a bad idea. I'm fully acknowledging that I'm probably making a mistake. So I'm going to lay the -14. Detroit has covered 7 spreads this year and 7 spreads in only 9 games. So a lot of success against the spread for them. They are 3-1 against the spread at home as well. So I'm going to hold my nose here and I'm going to lay the -14. Total in the game set at 46.5 points. I'm feeling another over here, especially if Detroit has any hope of covering that number. Give me an over on the 46.5 point total. I'm going to go like a 34-16, a little better than double them up. Detroit wins. Detroit disgustingly covers a -14, and give me the over on the 46.5 point total. The Minnesota Vikings, on the tail end of back-to-back road games and winners of back-to-back games, travel to Tennessee to take on a Titans team that came up on the short end of the stick last week. Tennessee only 1-3 in their own building this year, where the Vikings, even though it's a tail end of back-to-back road games, they found a lot of success on the road so far this year. They've won 3 of their 4 games away from Minnesota. They've also covered 6 spreads this year, and the number 6 is going to come into play here in a second. I feel pretty comfortable about the Vikings here. Again, winners of back-to-back games. I don't trust Tennessee on either side of the football right now. Their offense is putrid. Their defense is one of the leakiest, if not the leakiest in the NFL right now, although Dallas is a thing that we'll talk about a little bit later. But I really just don't like Tennessee's spot in this game. So give me a fairly comfortable win here for the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings on the road in Tennessee beat the Titans. All right. Against the spread, Tennessee is taking +6 as a, pretty healthy home dog. And I mean, that's a lot of points to lay on the road when you're not like an elite team. And I like the Vikings, but I don't look at the Vikings as an elite football team. So 6 points is a lot for them to lay on the road. What I will say is the Vikings have covered 6 spreads this year, and they've done that in 9 games. Tennessee only has covered once against the spread all season long. And they're also 0-4 at home against the spread. So that one cover was a road game. We're going to hold our nose here a little bit again and lay the -6 on Minnesota. It's under a touchdown. They're objectively the better football team. So I think we'll go ahead and lay it. But am I going to be shocked if they don't cover that? No, I just think it's the winning bet. So we'll lay the -6. Total in the game here set at 39.5 points, a low total, a really beatable total. The Vikings have only hit 3 overs all season long, and Tennessee is obviously not at all a powerhouse on really on either side of the ball. Certainly not the offensive side. I think I got to stay under on this. It's a gross under because the number doesn't even start with a 4, but I think I'm going to have to stay under on this total, under 39.5 points in Minnesota, Tennessee. I'm going to go like a 27-9, something like that. I don't think Tennessee gets into double digits over the last, month's worth of games. They've kind of struggled to get that as an average. I think they've scored like 61 or 62 points in their last 4 games. So around 15 points a game. Anyway, 27-9 is going to be my final score here. Vikings win. Vikings cover the -6 and give me an under on the 39.5 point total. And the last game we'll look at before we check in with chat here is the Las Vegas Raiders on the road, traveling to Miami to take on the Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins come into this game on the short week, having just played on Monday night, picking up a victory that I didn't think they were going to get. Props to them. It was, I think, 23-15, I think it was, over the Rams, who were a very marginal favorite in that game. I think they might have been I got them at -1. I think they were like -2.5 by the time it kicked off or something like that. So Dolphins come up with the win. They do come into this game on the short week. At the very least, they are at home. The Raiders come into this game off of their bye, which means they will be well rested, but losers of 5 straight games, only 1-4 on the road so far this year. So not finding a lot of success away from Vegas or in general, really. Again, you can't lose 5 straight games and talk about, it's tough to talk about ways you're finding success if you've lost 5 straight games. Worth noting, this is one of 2 teams that has kind of made a decision in terms of quarterbacking. The other one being the Indianapolis Colts, which we'll talk about shortly. But the Raiders have announced they are sticking with Gardner Minshew as their starting quarterback. There were calls, of course, to go to Desmond Ridder to get the start this week. They're sticking with Gardner Minshew at the very least for week 11. Minshew was benched 2 weeks ago in favor of Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder then threw a touchdown pass to Brock Bowers. So there was obviously a lot of noise to go to Desmond Ridder. Not going to happen this week anyway, but you got to imagine if Minshew gets benched one more time, they're probably just going to turn it over to Ridder. But as far as it goes right now, Minshew is going to be the starting quarterback. One of the interesting storylines coming into this game is going to be the availability or lack thereof of Tyreek Hill. Now, Tyreek Hill, of course, has been dealing with a wrist injury. It feels like all season long. Feel like he picked it up in preseason. Was, of course, exacerbated by the legal issue that he had back in September, I think it was, his altercation with the police. Whether he plays this week is a matter of some debate. And how effective he might be is also a matter of some debate, because it feels like this is one of those things where surgery is an option, and it feels like it would probably be better if they did that. But there's still an outside shot that the Dolphins could make a run and grab one of the AFC wildcard spots. So they obviously don't want to shut down arguably their most electric receiver. So that'll kind of be something to monitor, because it looks like he did re-aggravate that wrist injury last week. I would say he's 50-50 to play this week. I don't necessarily know that this is the game where you got to force it if he's not like 100% ready to go. I like the Dolphins in this spot. Neither one of these teams are particularly good. I don't think the Dolphins have been better offensively since Tua came back, but I mean, I still wouldn't call this a good football team, but they should be good enough to beat the Raiders at home. So let's take Miami at home, despite the fact that they're on the short week, to get the win over the Raiders. Now, on the line, Miami is laying 7.5 points as a strong, strong home favorite in this game, and that I don't trust at all. Like they're not a team that is good enough on paper or has shown enough this season as a whole, situationally, anything like that. They have not shown nearly enough to be a 7.5 point favorite over anybody in this league. College teams, sure. NFL teams, no thank you. So minus 7.5, can't take that. The Dolphins have not covered a spread at home all season long. So to cover minus 7.5, no thank you. I'm going to take those points on the Raiders plus the 7.5, especially if Tyreek Hill is not Tyreek Hill. You got to take those points. So plus 7.5, I'm happy to take that on the Raiders. Total in the game here set at 44 points. Now, this is kind of a tale of two cities. The Raiders have hit 6 overs in 9 games. The Dolphins have only hit 3 in 9 games. So even though like I'm going with the Dolphins to win, I also don't expect the Dolphins to obviously blow them out because I'm taking the points. I'm going to take a sneaky under here. I think this game might struggle to get to a 40. So I think I'm going to take the under here on the 44 points, go 23-17 in favor of the Dolphins, who win fairly convincingly, but do not cover the minus 7.5 under on the 44 points. All right, let's take a sip of water and let's get caught up with chat. Let's see. Andrew, the Green Journal from Money Bets. You know it. You know me so well. Andrew, until Daniel Snyder screws up the Commanders team like he always does. It's entirely possible. I agree with the over. Good. Should be called How the Lions Win a Football Game when the Lions play. It's man, they're an awesome football team. They're incredibly well prepared. Everyone's bought into the culture. They got a passion to be there. It's a great time to be a Lions fan. And after putting up with years of that shit, they absolutely deserve it. Bad to worse going Trevor Lawrence to Mac Jones. Jacksonville needs to clean up like AEW. Lions Bloodline versus Jaguars, AEW the Elite. That's funny. We need Gio and Keith to help us out with Minnesota and Titans. I think you offended Gio for calling the Vikings not an elite team. I think Gio would probably agree with that. I really do. He's not here, but I think he would agree with that. Both teams under 500 could be a good game. Yeah, absolutely. Competitive game for sure. I think I would trust Ritter more than Minshew. I think Gardner Minshew is an elite backup quarterback. I don't necessarily know that I love him as my starter. Put it that way. As for the Dolphins, the best of times, worst of times. Yeah. It's the best of times. It's the blurst of times, you stupid monkey. Simpsons quotes for all occasions. Okay, let's take a look at Aiden's fantasy football trade here that he mentioned a little bit ago. I have a crazy trade. I trade away Gibbs and Josh Downs. Okay. I get Tyreek and Chase Brown. Okay. Wilson, Lamb, Downs. By Wilson, I'm going to assume you mean Garrett Wilson. Okay, my roster is Gibbs, Cook, Montgomery. Okay, Wilson, Lamb, Downs. So you trade away Gibbs and Josh Downs. I mean, it's a big... I don't know that I do that. Only because I don't... Tyreek Hill offers so much. It's such boom or bust. And I realize, like you said, I'm 3-7 and in dead last. So maybe you do feel like you need to swing for a home run. And I can understand that. If that's where you're at, then I would probably do that deal. Yeah, at 3-7, I think I probably do that deal. Again, I don't love it because there's so much uncertainty around Tyreek Hill that like what his availability is going to be for the rest of the season really concerns me. But in saying that, like you said, you're 3-7, so it's basically now or never. So yeah, to do that trade, I can't, I don't, I'd probably do it, but I understand where it comes from. That's cool. I wish I had one of my like trade calculators up right in front of me. I could kind of run it through and see what that says. But in context, I think it makes sense. All right. The Green Bay Packers traveling to Chicago to take on the Bears. The Bears, who, of course, let go of Shane Waldron, their offensive coordinator, just a day or two ago, amidst a really bad offensive season. At this point, they're not moving the ball, they're not scoring. Their efficiency is bottom 10 over the last month. Caleb Williams is regressing almost as a rookie quarterback, which is something you obviously never want to see. They losers of 3 straight games as well, so the season is very quickly kind of slipping away in Chicago. For Green Bay, they're coming in off of a loss a couple of weeks ago, but they do come in off of the bye, so obviously should be well rested, ready to go. It was a little concerning that Josh Jacobs came up on the injury report today, but that feels like one of those, like he'll have the Q tag today and it'll be gone by tomorrow kind of thing. Like Green Bay is really managing his reps for the majority of the season. I think the NFL equivalent of what's that term in the NBA? Load management. The NFL equivalent of load management for Josh Jacobs. Worth pointing out here, the Packers are unbeaten on the road this year. They're 3-0. The Bears are 3-1 at home. The Bears have found most of their success this season at home at Soldier Field. So, I mean, this is a low key. This is a pretty fun matchup here, even though I think objectively the Packers are the better football team between the two. Like Chicago's certainly been struggling. I like Chicago's defense maybe a little bit more right now than I like Green Bay's. It's fairly close. I certainly like Green Bay's offense more. Let's take the Packers to get the win here on the road in Chicago. But Chicago, actually, the Packers are laying a significant amount of points here. So obviously, Vegas feels like this new OC is going to take some time. And I agree with that. Like, I think the game plan is probably going to be fairly rudimentary this week because he's just getting there, just installing some of his systems. So I can understand that, but the Packers are laying 5.5 points here on the road in a division game, which just feels like a lot to me. I don't necessarily see the Packers exploding for like 40 points or something in this game. 5.5 just seems like a lot. I'm going to hedge my bets here. I like the Packers to win the game straight up, but give me that plus 5.5 on the Chicago Bears at home. Again, they're 3-1 at home this year. So they're a good home team. Give me that plus 5.5. Total in the game set at 40. The Bears have only hit 3 overs all season long. I'm kind of feeling a sneaky under in this one. Let's stay under the 40-point total in Green Bay, Chicago. I'm going to go like a 20-17. Maybe Brandon McManus has to walk it off. I like the Packers to win. Give me the plus 5.5 on Chicago and an under on the 40-point total. All right, let's go through 4 games here relatively quickly. The Los Angeles Rams on the road in New England taking on the New England Patriots. Now, the Patriots did pick up the win last week. Fairly impressive little showing there, again, against a Chicago team that is really, really wildly struggling to move the football, to score points. Certainly a bad showing for the Bears on their home field, where, again, they've been pretty good this year. That was the Patriots. I think that was that their first win on the road this year? No, second win on the road this year. So they're finding some success away from home. They get to go home in this matchup against a Rams team that's going to be coming in on the short week. Losers last week, which we talked about on Monday night. And again, a Rams team that feels like they should be significantly better than they are. We're looking at a matchup here where I think this is two very good defenses. I think points come at a premium in this game, which actually kind of has me second guessing where I'm going with the total. The total's at 44, but again, these two defenses playing very, very strong over the last month or so. As a matter of fact, almost identical. From an efficiency perspective, they're both at a 16.1 over the last month. Uh, Points allowed on the defensive side, Rams 19.5, Patriots 19.3, yardage allowed 313.8, 310.5. Like, they're almost identical statistical results over the last month, which is actually kind of fun. So if it comes down to which one of these two offenses is playing better right now, it's probably the Rams, but again, this is like it's a matchup of two teams that it's very, very hard to trust over what you've seen over the last little bit here. I kind of just want to grab the team with momentum, and I feel like the team with momentum is the Patriots. This would be an upset play for sure, but I think I'm going to grab New England here at home. Let's take the Patriots in a home upset here to upset the Los Angeles Rams at Foxborough. Part of my reasoning for that, on the line, the Patriots are taking +4.5 as a, fairly solid home dog. The Rams have only covered 3 spreads this season in total. They're only 1-3 against the spread and straight up on the road. So I think either way you go with this game, the smart play is taking the points here at +4.5. I'm going to do it because I like the Patriots to win the game outright. Total in the game set at 44 points. And you know what? I think I am actually going to call an audible on this. Give me 1 second. My trusty pencils in hand. I'm going to go ahead and call an audible here. The people on the stream are watching me do this live in real time. I was going to take an over here, but I don't think I'm going to. Let's grab an under. Under 44 points in Patriots Rams, and we are going to go, same context, just a little bit of a lower score. I was going to go 26-23. I'm now going to go 23-20. 23-20 Patriots. Maybe we see them walk it off. Patriots win. Patriots cover the +4.5 and give me an under, pretty close under, but give me an under on the points. Another matchup of two teams that have been struggling mightily lately, the Cleveland Browns on the road in New Orleans, taking on the Saints. Now, despite the Saints win last week against Atlanta, again, another one of those freaky NFC South games that feels like anything can happen and anything goes almost. The Saints have been a hard fade for me for quite some time. The Browns are essentially a hard fade for me as well. This offense is putrid. It feels like they're holding on to a system and to personnel that is just not working. The Browns do at least get to come into this game off the bye, so they will be fairly well rested. But again, losers 2 weeks ago, only 1-3 on the road are the Browns this season. I think I've got to go with the Saints at the very least. Again, kind of like when I talked about Miami, like a team with, or the Patriots for that matter, the team with a bit more momentum. And I feel like the Saints are exactly that. So even though they've basically been a hard fade for me for the majority of the season, let's see if this Saints team kind of has something cooking here in the back half of the season. Let's take New Orleans at home to beat the Cleveland Browns. Now on the line, New Orleans is only laying a single point as a home favorite. The Browns have only covered 3 times against the spread this season, so it's a single point. I like them to win. Let's lay the -1. Total in the game set at 44.5 points. The Browns have also only hit 3 overs so far this season. So let's go ahead and grab an under here. I think this could be a game that might struggle to get to 40 points. Let's go under the 44.5 point total. 23-17 here in favor of the Saints. Saints win. Saints cover under on the points, and I'm going to take the advice of one of the folks is in the chat right now, Rob Amon, and save your money. This is one of those games that I would not touch with a 25-foot pole from a betting perspective. The only bet I might take in this game is a Kamara anytime touchdown. Other than that, none of my money would touch this football game. Too many unanswerable questions, too many variables, but I'll take the Saints to win, Saints to cover, and I'll take the under. Now, the Indianapolis Colts traveling to New York to take on the Jets. Jets are coming into this game off of a loss last week. The Colts are losers of 3 straight games and announced earlier today that Anthony Richardson is taking back over under center at quarterback. Not only this week, but the plan is for him to be the starting quarterback for the rest of the season. So let me just say this, because I was somebody who was not overly in favor of Richardson being benched the first time. And it's not that I thought he was lighting it on fire, because he certainly was not. First of all, I feel like way too much was made of the whole tapping out thing. But here's where my perspective is. Moreover, I like, in principle, the idea of a young quarterback sitting behind a veteran for a few years. I think this culture of, if we draft a quarterback in the first round, he has to play right away, I think it's detrimental to most quarterbacks' development. In saying that, you have to have the right veteran in front of them. I love Joe Flacco. I think Joe Flacco is an incredible player in this league. Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson are nothing alike as quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson can learn everything there is to learn from Joe Flacco about how to be a pro, game day preparation, how to do all the right things. He can learn all those things. But they don't play anything alike. So Anthony Richardson is only going to get better if he plays. He's not going to get better sitting on the bench. This is not a Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers thing. This isn't even a Michael Penix, Kirk Cousins thing. Michael Penix can sit on the bench behind Kirk Cousins for a couple of years. You know why? Because they're essentially the same quarterback. Like, they're high volume, deep ball passing quarterbacks. So Michael Penix sitting behind Kirk Cousins is great, because he can watch how his style of play, he can watch, and working with that guy every single day is going to make Michael Penix a better version of himself. Working with Joe Flacco every day will teach Anthony Richardson things, but he's not going to come into his own as a quarterback if he's not playing. That's the way this is with this particular setup. Maybe a guy like, I don't know, like a Marcus Mariota or something, not saying they should go out and get Mariota, but that style of play is somebody that, yeah, maybe Anthony Richardson could sit behind for a year and it might aid his development. Joe Flacco's just not that guy. So Richardson has to play. So now he's back at the point where he is going to play, and that is what's best for that player's development. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, this is a game that I think I'm entirely going to base on, I would say, the defensive side of the ball, because neither one of these offenses are particularly good right now. Aaron Rodgers always has the possibility to have an Aaron Rodgers game. And I would argue that the Jets probably have the better offensive personnel. I don't necessarily know that they use those offensive personnel the way they should, or use them better than the Colts do. But I'm going to lean on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm going to lean on one of the more underrated defensive units in the NFL. That's the Indianapolis Colts. And they have been for some time. Not enough people are talking about how good this Colts defense actually is. I like the upset here. Even though the Colts are only 1-4 on the road, they're not great. They're certainly not great. The Jets are a hard fade. The Jets are about as hard a fade to me as, like I talked about the Saints earlier. I would argue the Jets are a harder fade for me right now than the Saints. I'm going to grab the upset here. Give me the Indianapolis Colts on the road in New York to beat Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. On the line, the Jets are laying -4. That does kind of lean into this a little bit. The Jets aren't good enough to be laying -4 in this game. The Colts have also covered 7 times against the spread so far this season versus the Jets, who have only covered 3 and they've played 10 games. So the Jets have not found a lot of success against Vegas this year. Indianapolis has. Give me the +4 and give me the Colts to win the game outright. Total in the game set at 44. This is a situational under for me. These two teams, Jets at home, Colts on the road, combining to be 2-7 to the over so far this year. So definitely give me an under on that 44-point total. I'm going to go like a 21-20. Give me some Anthony Richardson magic right at the end of the game, scoring play in the last 2 minutes. Colts steal this one from the Jets in New York. Indianapolis wins. Indianapolis covers. Give me an under on the 44-point total. And the last game we're going to look at before we look at Sunday Night Football, which is between Cincinnati and the Chargers, is the Baltimore Ravens traveling to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Another high-profile marquee matchup of the AFC North. So Baltimore comes in winners of 2 straight games. Pittsburgh comes in winners of 4 straight games. So these are 2 teams meeting each other pretty darn close to their apex. Baltimore is lighting the league up on the offensive side of the ball over their last 4 games, 420 yards of offense, over 35 points a game. Pittsburgh, no slouch here, 383 yards a game, about 32 points a game. From an efficiency perspective, they're both top 5 on the offensive side. Defensively, it's a bit of a different story. Baltimore has been giving up a ton. The Baltimore Ravens play very high event football. They do a lot of stuff on the offensive side. They allow a lot of stuff on the defensive side. Pittsburgh, while they do have a high event offense, have a low event defense. That defense is very good. It is very stout. It's great in the secondary. It's great against the run. There's nothing that this Steelers defense does poorly. It's my opinion anyway. The Ravens do come into this game with the benefit of the long week, having played on Thursday last week. So 10 days to prepare for this one. But I got to tell you something. I think this Pittsburgh Steelers team, while I think the Ravens are a great team, I think the Steelers are special. I look at the Steelers as a special team and a legitimate threat to win the AFC. So give me the home upset here. Give me the Pittsburgh Steelers at home to get the win over the Baltimore Ravens. Pittsburgh wins it on the offensive side and on the defensive side. Let's take the Steelers to beat Baltimore. On the line, Pittsburgh is taking +3 here as a home dog. The Steelers are not only 3-1 straight up at home, they are 3-1 against the spread as well. They've covered 7 spreads in 9 games this season. Give me the +3 because I certainly like them to win outright. Total in the game set at 48 points. The Ravens have 9 overs this year already. Again, very high event football in Baltimore this year. The 2 teams have combined to hit the over 14 times this year. So let's go ahead and take an over on that 48-point total. Give me a 27-26. Give me a super exciting, like prime time worthy football game. 27-26. Steelers win. Steelers cover the +3 over on the 48-point total. Now, before we get back into Sunday Night Football, again, previewing Sunday night before we finish off the rest of the week, let's get caught up in chat. Okay, where did I leave off here? Rob Amon in the chat, who I mentioned, Packers win, cover, Bears have quit on Eberflus. That's a coaching change that I certainly expect will happen. I saw somebody, I saw some, I think it was on Twitter, where it's like Caleb Williams will be the last one to go. So everybody else, you're on the clock. And I think Eberflus's name is at the top of that list, 100%. I think Williams is in growing pains like the Patriots with Drake May. Rob says the Rams win but take the points. Rams Patriots announcers Adam Amin, Mark Sanchez. I don't know if my Patriots are ready for a game like the Rams yet. Believe, Andrew, believe. Don't get me wrong, my Patriots have played better since Mayo called them soft a few weeks ago. You know what? 100%. You are on the money with that one. Rob thinks it's a Jameis revenge game for Cleveland. Browns win, but save your money. Andrew says, I think Anthony Richardson needs a fresh start. I mean, the dude hasn't even played a full season of football games yet. People feel like he's been in the NFL longer than he has. Like, he's only had 10 games. So it's like I feel like I think he has a longer leash than that. Although they've already benched him once, so who knows? Maybe I'm totally wrong about that. Rob says Jets win, another game to save your money on. Steichen is on the hot seat going forward. I agree with that as well. Drake May didn't start right away. Jacoby Brissett started. That's true. That was kind of based on fears around the offensive line, but I get where you're coming from there. Rob saying he would even elevate Sam Ehlinger to second string for the Colts. Colts need Justin Fields in 2025. Ooh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. Okay. Can the Jets or Giants go to the CFL? We don't want them. Rob says Steelers win and cover. Defense wins. And Andrew says Baltimore versus Pittsburgh, Mortal Kombat. I like it. I wish I was wearing my Mortal Kombat shirt. All right. Let's skip ahead now to Sunday Night Football. As I mentioned, the Cincinnati Bengals coming in on the tail end of back-to-back road games in Los Angeles, taking on the Chargers. Now, the Chargers, boy, it feels like their culture has just completely turned around. Winners of 3 straight games. They found a lot of success in Los Angeles this year, where they're 3-1. Bengals, again, coming in on the tail end of back-to-back road games, having the benefit of the long week, having played on Thursday, losers last week against Baltimore on Thursday Night Football. But man, what a football game that was. Back and forth in the fourth quarter. Felt like the Bengals were playing for their playoff lives, because arguably I think they were. Like, I don't have the standings right up in front of me, but like, the leash for the Bengals is very short in terms of the division's probably out of reach at this point, but in terms of, grabbing one of those late AFC playoff spots, like, you got to start playing some playoff football games at this point, because losses are critical. If they're a team that's aspiring to get into the playoffs, which I feel like they very much are, their window to do that with Joe Burrow and with the talent that they have, especially on the offensive side of the ball, but on both sides, really, like, the time to play playoff style games is here. Like, it's not a must win, but man, it's really close. Now, anyone who's watched this show for a while understands that I've got some Chargers based trauma. Every time the Chargers feel like they've turned a corner and aren't going to do it to me again, they do it to me again. And I'm not a Chargers fan. I'm not part of the fan base. But every time I feel like I'm believing in them, something happens. In saying that, it does feel different now. And especially on the defensive side, where the Chargers are really winning is on the defensive side of the ball. They are incredibly efficient defensively. The scoring defense has been stout over the last month or so. They've been almost unbeatable. I really badly want to take the Bengals. But I think what that's doing, I think what that is me wanting, like, it's me trying to speak it into existence. You know what I mean? So I'm going to do for a second time in this show. I don't know that I've ever done this multiple times because originally I did pick the Chargers and then I swapped and I swapped over to the Bengals. I am now going to re-swap because, again, that's me trying to speak something into existence rather than going with the reality. And the reality of the situation is that the Bengals are playing incredible on the offensive side, and their defense is still basically unwinnable. Like they do not have the defensive results right now to justify taking them to beat a defensively stout team like the Chargers. That being said, if the Chargers blow this game, you might have to get me a padded room because it's just going to bring everything back. So we are going to go ahead and I'm going to make this change live. We are going to grab the Los Angeles Chargers to win this game straight up. Again, there are 3-1 at home. They've had a lot of success at home this year. Chargers get their 4th straight win and beat the Bengals. Now, the Chargers are only laying -1.5, so a very marginal home favorite here, and they have covered 6 spreads in 9 games. So we are going to go ahead and lay the -1.5, which does in fact spit in the face of the fact that the Bengals have not lost against the spread on the road this year. They are 5-0 against the spread away from Cincinnati. So this does spit in the face of that, but it's such a marginal spread. It's got to go with the team that wins the game. There's no hedge value there whatsoever. Total in the game set at 48 points. I do think I am going to take an over here because, again, Cincinnati's defense is just like, it's not viable. So I see the Chargers being able to put up as many points as they need to win this game. So let's take an over here, over 48 points in Los Angeles, Cincinnati. I'm going to go ahead and take a 28-24 in favor of the Chargers. Chargers win. Chargers cover the -1.5 over on the points. Am I going to be shocked if it goes the other way? No. All right, 3 more games, and then we get into Monday Night Football. The Atlanta Falcons on the road in Denver, taking on the Broncos. This is a battle of 2 teams that my model isn't particularly in love with right now. The Falcons are struggling on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, they're moving the ball great, and they're getting the ball to their stars, which is obviously great to see. They are also 3-1 away from home this year. They're coming into this game off of a loss last week. Denver has lost 2 straight. Some of the shine is off of them, but on the defensive side of the ball, I feel like they're actually playing pretty, at the very least, league average, but, playing relatively well defensively. Now, originally, this was another upset play. This was another one where I was like, even though it's the tail end of back-to-back road games, they found a lot of success on the road. I'm happy to take the Falcons. And then about, I want to say an hour before I went live, I saw that Kirk Cousins is dealing with 2 separate injuries to his throwing arm. That's a problem against a good defense in their building. That's a problem. So I think I'm going to go ahead and take the Denver Broncos to win this game because I don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be on the other team. Maybe this is nothing, but 2 separate injuries to the same arm, and it's the one he uses to throw the football, which, to my understanding, is important in the game of football, I think. So let's take the Denver Broncos. Denver gets the win at home. Also, interesting to note, for like the third time in 3 years, Denver just completely redid their whole field. Brought in like 20 trucks worth of new sod and just redid their entire field. So good on the Broncos for keeping the playing surface as fresh and up to date as possible, because that is just good news for the health of everybody. So shout out to the Broncos for that. On the line, Denver's laying -2.5 here as a home favorite. They've covered 7 spreads this year. I like them to win. It's a relatively small price to pay. Let's lay the -2.5 on Denver. Total in the game here set at 44. I don't think this game gets into the 40s, so give me an under on this one. Under 44 points in Denver, Atlanta. I'm going to go 23-16 in favor of the Denver Broncos, who win, cover the -2.5, and give me the under on the points. Battle of the NFC West is coming up next, which is the Seattle Seahawks in San Francisco taking on the Niners. Niners are winners of 2 straight games and have their, franchise running back in the fold now, Christian McCaffrey. He's an all-go. He touched the ball 19 times last week, I believe it was. Run CMC is definitely back. The Seahawks, losers of 2 straight games and coming into the game off the bye, which means they should be well rested. They had quite an ample amount of time to get ready for this game. While the Niners are a team that my model doesn't particularly know what to do with, because they move the ball really well and they don't give up a ton of yardage on the defensive side, but they give up way more points than they should. So the efficiency on the defensive side for the Niners is kind of in the toilet over the last month or so, bottom 5. But I think this offense is a little undeniable in this spot, especially where the Seahawks defense has not been playing well over the last month. So give me the Niners here, fairly heavy. Let's take San Francisco at home to get the win over Seattle. On the line, Niners are laying -6.5. The Seahawks have only covered 2 spreads so far this year. So let's go ahead and lay that -6.5, just barely under a touchdown. But let's lay it on Brock Purdy, CMC, and the Niners. Total in the game set at 48.5 points. This is a very marginal under for me, but I just don't really trust the Seahawks really on either side of the ball right now. So 48.5, it's a pretty good number, but I am going to take an under on it. Under 48.5 points in San Francisco, Seattle. Let's go 30-16. So Niners win, Niners cover the -6.5, and give me an under on the 48.5 point total. Now, for most people, this one here is the game of the week. The unbeaten Kansas City Chiefs take their 9-0 record into Buffalo to take on Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. Now, you'll notice we have not talked about a lot of injuries this week, which is good. We want to talk about as few as possible. We do have to talk about one in this game, and that is to Buffalo Bills tight end Dalton Kincaid. He's dealing with a knee contusion. I think there was some concern maybe about a PCL injury, but that seems like maybe it's not the case here. I would still lean on him being out, and we probably don't see him again until after the Week 12 bye. As far as I'm concerned, there's no real reason I don't think to play him this week. So I think he sits this week, gets the bye, and then gets to come back even healthier in week 13. So that is an offensive weapon off the board for the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, the Chiefs are unbeaten on the road because they haven't lost yet this year. Bills are 4-0 in Buffalo. So the Bills have found a ton of success in their home building. This is going to be probably the most fun game of the weekend. Like, I think this is going in terms of a fun, electric atmosphere, fun football game to watch. Unbeaten seasons just don't happen. They just don't. Like, eventually, this Chiefs team is going to lose. I think there's a pretty good chance it's this week. I think this Bills defense is what carries them. I understand that the Chiefs are exceptionally efficient on the offensive side of the ball. I like Buffalo here. I think the Bills win this on the strength of not only the offense, but in particular the defense. I think they shut the Chiefs offense down and the Bills get the win, hand KC their first loss of the season. I'm on Buffalo to extend their win streak to 6 straight games. Give me the Bills at home. On the line, the Bills are laying -2.5 here as a marginal home favorite. I like them to win. It's a relatively small price to pay. Let's lay the -2.5 on Buffalo. Total in the game here set at 46. This is a situational over to me. The two teams have combined to barely be over 500. Um, with Buffalo at home, Kansas City on the road. It's 5-3 in 8 games. So I think I will take the over here to just barely get into the 50s. 27-24 is my final score here for the Buffalo Bills, who win, cover, and go over the point total. Hey, Martin's here. Martin's here just before Monday Night Football, which is awesome. And before we talk about Monday Night Football, one more time, we're going to get caught up in the chat just to see what we have missed out on. Rob Iman says, bolt up. Chargers make a statement on Sunday Night Football. That, I'm not going to lie, that may have partially influenced me. Only a little. But I mean, I was feeling making that change anyway. Jets or Giants are free for the CFL or even the UFL. They can go to the UFL. That's perfectly fine. As I mentioned, we do not want them up here. I think I overestimate Jim Harbaugh. Zach Taylor should be fired, but Mike Brown is too cheap. Oh, boy. That's rough. Bo Nix has a great game and Atlanta loses at Mile High. Peyton's the better coach. I would probably agree with that. Rob also says Niners win and cover. And 72 Dolphins pop open the champagne when Buffalo pulls the upset. That's kind of how I feel too. Andrew, 49ers healthy means time for their playoff football. I agree. And look, low-key, Brock Purdy's been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL this year. So we cannot underestimate what Brock Purdy has done without Brandon Ayuk for like the last however many weeks it's been since he went out for the season. Like, Purdy's doing some great things. Martin says, I don't know if I'll pick Buffalo, but I sure wish someone would beat KC. So no worries, Martin. It's going to happen this week. And Andrew says, KC offense not producing like they normally have. Absolutely. And again, I think the Bills defense is one that's good enough to fully exploit that and wind up leading them to a win. All right. Monday Night Football. Battle of Texas. We go down to Dallas, where Jerry Jones and his sunny stadium play host to the Houston Texans. I'm going to say one thing about Jerry Jones, and that is going to be the end of it. It was a toddler level response to the questions about the sun. He acted like an old, rich, white toddler. Well, we know a year out where the sun's going to be. Well, then why didn't you put up the curtains? Well, you want me to just tear down the whole stadium? No, I want you to put the goddamn curtains up. That's what I want you to do. When your star player does not catch what should have been a touchdown because he can't see anything, I don't care how big your ego is, because that's all this is. It's ego. I don't care how rich you are. I don't care how big your ego is. I don't care about any of that. Stop hurting your own football team. Or if you can't stop hurting your own football team, sell it to somebody who won't. Sell it to somebody who will put the damn curtains up. It's not like you don't have them. You've already bought them. You have them. It's not that you're cheap. It's just that your ego won't allow you to admit, hey guys, I was dumb on this one. Sorry, my bad. Let's fix it. That's it. That's all you have to do. Even if you want to be a scumbag and take the curtains down only when the other team is driving in that direction. If you want to be a scumbag, you can. I would at least respect it. Like this, you're just being an egotist. And I don't know. It's obviously there's a lot of things that can be said about Jerry Jones. That's going to be the extent of what I feel smart enough to be able to say. Houston's going to pulverize them. Look, their losers of 2 straight games are the Texans. Dallas is losers of 4 straight games, still have not won at home this season. They're a putrid football team right now. They need to fire the coach. The wholesale changes in Dallas. Again, I think the ownership with that team is a problem. As rich as he might be and influential as he might be, I think the ownership there is a problem. And it just ain't their season. And it ain't going to be their night either, because Houston's going to walk in there and CJ Stroud is going to throw that ball all over that field. Houston in a walk. On the line, Dallas is taking +7.5. They have covered 2 spreads all year. They are 0-4 against the spread at home. Houston covers -7.5. Total in the game set at 42. Houston has only hit 2 overs this season, and that's 2 overs in 10 games. So there's been not a lot of points in Houston. However, that's going to change this week. I'm going to take the over here. Such a beatable number of 42. And even if Dallas doesn't do much, I still think this winds up hitting an over. So over the 42 points in Houston and Dallas, we are going to go, we're going to go 37-17. So Houston wins. Houston covers the -7.5 fairly comfortably. And we're going to go over the 42 point total, 37-17. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Those are my picks for week 11 in the NFL in 2024. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoyed the picks. And we will be right back here next week, probably in our regular time slot to do the week 12 episode. So thank you so much for watching. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and we will see you again in week number 12. All right, folks, that is the podcast version of the show done. Now we're kind of in the after party, the weekly after party. So, what did you guys think of the picks this week? What do you really agree with? What do you hate? Where do you think I'm completely off base? What do you love? Let me know. Give me some feedback here in the last couple of minutes. One thing I will say I'm really enjoying about the process over the last few weeks is the change in how I'm recording the audio for the podcast version, because that was really contributing to why the audio issues were happening on the stream. By the way, I hope the audio on the stream sounded fine this week. If it didn't, please let me know. But if it sounded clear and sounded normal, then we're all good. Yeah, I felt part of the reason that I decided to go early this week was I felt pretty good about most of the picks that I already had. And I felt like waiting until 7:00 probably would only serve to give me opportunities to second guess myself. So if you feel good about it, you might as well fire. And I knew I was so far ahead of stream time that it wasn't gonna hurt to go early. Gorian, how you doing, my friend? Audio good? Awesome. That's great. Congratulations, by the way, on winning week 10. Yeah. So I just kind of felt like it was worthwhile to fire early. But like I say, next week we'll more than likely be back to regular stream time, which is usually 7 p.m. Eastern. So for folks who haven't been here before, 7 p.m. Eastern on Wednesdays is when I normally always do this show. Let's see. If Dallas loses to Houston, Jerry Jones needs to fire Mike McCarthy. I think he should have fired Mike McCarthy probably a couple weeks ago. That's me. Um, Jerry's turning into Al Davis in his last years. That's actually probably a pretty apt um, comparison. I think there's actually probably a lot that's correct in that. Jerry Jones, the Cruella de Vil of the NFL. I like that. You should buy the Cowboys. Unless Jerry's going to accept a hot dog and a handshake, uh, I probably can't afford it. I don't make quite that much YouTube money. Let's see. Houston needs a win after the meltdown against Detroit. Yeah, agree for sure. Great picks. Just don't agree with my Patriots versus the Rams. Fair enough. I hope your team pleasantly surprises you, Andrew. And Gorian likes KC on the money line. I mean, how do you bet against them at this point? I mean, I figured out a way, but I'm also a degenerate, so I understand. You know what? I understand. However, anybody wants to go on that game. Honestly, I really do. All right. Eagles, Packers, Dolphins money line. Yeah, I think I like that. Or Jerry Jones, the Wicked Witch of the West. All right, so since we're making Disney references at this point, I think we're going to go ahead and call the stream right there. Thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time to stop in, watch the show this week. Again, should be back to our regular time slot next week. So thank you so much for coming out. Enjoy the games in week 11. If you have the opportunity, I will be here live Sunday night, live streaming a watch along of the 111th Grey Cup. So I don't have the media rights. I won't be able to actually show the game, but I'll be watching the game. I'll be here live. We can chat about the game, all that fun stuff. That's going to be on Sunday. I think kickoff is around 7 p.m. Eastern. I'll make an announcement about when the stream will start in the next day or two. But yeah, I'll be here on Sunday doing a watch along of the Grey Cup. So if you're interested in the CFL, the CFL's championship game, then yeah, pop in the stream on Sunday. We will see you again next week for week number 12.